In the heart of Atlanta, there was a young boy who lived in a small, cozy house with his mom. They didn't have much, just enough to get by, but their love for each other made up for what they lacked in money. The boy had big dreams and an even bigger heart. From the time he was little, music seemed to flow through him like water in a river. It wasn't something he learned, it just came naturally. The neighborhood where they lived wasn't fancy. There weren't any grand buildings or shiny cars parked outside. Most people worked hard every day just to make ends meet. But despite all this, the boy found joy in the simplest things. One of those things was music. He loved listening to tunes on the radio, humming along as he walked home from school. Sometimes, when no one was watching, he'd tap rhythms on tables or walls, imagining himself playing instruments he'd only seen in pictures. School was okay, but it didn't offer much for someone like him. There was no band, no choir, not even a single piano in the entire building. Still, he dreamed of making music someday. Every now and then, he'd borrow a friend's keyboard, a cheap plastic thing with sticky keys, and practice quietly at night after finishing his homework. His mom would sit nearby, smiling softly as she watched her son pour his soul into those tiny notes. One sunny afternoon, while walking back from school, the boy noticed something unusual. A huge mansion stood at the end of his street, its golden gates wide open. Inside, people were gathered for what looked like a big party. Laughter filled the air, and the smell of delicious food drifted out onto the sidewalk. Curious, the boy slowed down, peeking through the gate to see what was happening. That's when he saw it, the most beautiful piano he'd ever laid eyes on. It sat right in the middle of the room, shining under a sparkling chandelier. Its polished surface reflected the sunlight streaming through the windows, almost glowing like magic. The boy felt his breath catch in his throat. He couldn't take his eyes off it. For a moment, he forgot about everything else. The noise of the party, the crowd of strangers, even the fact that he wasn't supposed to be standing there. Without thinking too much, he stepped closer. His feet carried him past the gate and toward the open doorway. No one seemed to notice him as he slipped inside. All eyes were on the guests mingling around, chatting and laughing. The boy moved slowly, carefully, until he was close enough to touch the piano. He reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing against the smooth wood. Just as he did, a voice rang out behind him. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Startled, the boy turned around to face a group of kids heading his way. Leading them was a well-dressed boy about his age, clearly used to getting what he wanted. He pointed at the piano and said, "That's mine. You shouldn't be touching it." The boy froze, unsure of how to respond. The others laughed, some whispering cruel jokes under their breath. "Look at him," one of them said loudly. "Doesn't even know what a real piano looks like." Another added, "Yeah, probably never touched one before." Their words stung, but the boy refused to let them see how hurt he felt. Instead, he straightened up, meeting the rich boy's gaze head-on. "I can play," he said firmly, though his voice wavered slightly. The rich boy raised an eyebrow, looking both amused and annoyed. "Oh, really? Prove it," he challenged, folding his arms across his chest. The laughter stopped as everyone turned to watch the scene unfold. More people began gathering, curious to see what would happen next. For a second, the boy hesitated. Doubts crept into his mind. What if he messed up? What if they laughed even harder? But then he remembered all those nights practicing on the old keyboard, all the melodies he'd created in his head. This was his chance to show them, and himself, that he belonged. Taking a deep breath, he sat down on the bench. His hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. Then, without another thought, he pressed down. And in that instant, the world changed, for him and for everyone watching. The room fell silent as the first note rang out. It was soft, almost hesitant, like the boy wasn't sure where to begin. But then something incredible happened. The music started flowing, slow at first, but soon it picked up speed and intensity. Each note seemed to come alive, filling the air with a sound so rich and powerful that it felt like the walls themselves might shake. At first, the crowd didn't know how to react. Some people exchanged glances, unsure if they were hearing things right. Others tilted their heads, trying to figure out what kind of song this was. It wasn't a tune anyone recognized. It wasn't classical or pop or anything you'd hear on the radio. Instead, it was something completely unique, something raw and honest, as if the boy was pouring his whole life into those keys. As the melody grew stronger, the boy closed his eyes, letting his hands move across the piano without thinking too much. He played with a confidence that surprised even himself. Every key he pressed told a story, the struggles he'd faced growing up, the love he shared with his mom, the dreams he carried in his heart. There was sadness in the low notes, hope in the high ones, and pure joy in the way they all came together. The rich boy who had challenged him stood frozen, his arms still crossed but his expression changing by the second. At first, there was skepticism, a look that said, "This better be good." Then came curiosity, followed quickly by disbelief. By the time the piece reached its halfway point, his jaw had dropped slightly, his eyes glued to the boy's fingers dancing over the keys. People began whispering to each other, their voices hushed but full of wonder. "Who is this kid?" One woman asked, no one in particular. Another replied, "I don't know, but he's amazing." Someone else added, "How does he know how to play like that?" Even the older guests, who probably thought they'd seen everything in their lives, couldn't help but stare. One man leaned against the wall, shaking his head in amazement. "Never heard anything like it," he muttered under his breath. The boy didn't notice any of this. All he could focus on was the music. For those few minutes, nothing else mattered. Not the fancy house, not the crowd of strangers, not even the boy who had mocked him earlier. It was just him and the piano, locked in a conversation only they understood. When the final chord echoed, through the room there was a moment of complete silence. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if everyone needed a second to process what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. It was quiet at first, almost tentative. But soon others joined in, until the entire room erupted into applause. People cheered, whistling and shouting words of praise. "Bravo!" cried one guest. "That was unbelievable," said another. Even the kids who had laughed at him earlier looked stunned, their faces flushed with embarrassment. They hadn't expected this, not from the boy standing in front of them now. The rich boy stepped forward, breaking away from the crowd. His earlier smugness was gone, replaced by genuine admiration. That was incredible," he said, his voice faltering slightly. "Where did you learn to play like that?" The boy smiled faintly, still catching his breath. "I didn't learn it," he replied simply. "I feel it." His answer left everyone speechless. In those 4 words, he summed up everything they had just experienced. This wasn't about lessons or practice routines. It was about passion, about connecting with something deeper than words could describe. And for the first time, the rich boy, and everyone else in the room, understood that talent doesn't care about where you come from or what you own. It thrives in the heart. But the performance didn't end there. As the cheering continued, an older woman pushed her way through the crowd. She had short gray hair and wore glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Her presence commanded attention, and when she spoke, her voice carried authority. "That was extraordinary," she said, addressing the boy directly. "Do you mind telling me your name?" He hesitated before answering, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on him. Sure," he said quietly, giving his name. "Well," the woman continued, smiling warmly, "my name is Mrs. Harper, and I used to teach music at some of the best schools in the country. I haven't heard playing like yours since my days mentoring young prodigies." The boy blinked, unsure of what to say. Compliments weren't something he was used to receiving, especially not from someone who looked so important. "I want to help you," Mrs. Harper went on, her tone firm yet kind. "You have a gift, and gifts like yours shouldn't go unnoticed. Let me guide you, give you access to proper training and resources." For a moment, the boy didn't respond. His mind raced with questions. Was this real? Could he trust her? What would his mom think? But looking into Mrs. Harper's eyes, he saw sincerity. This wasn't pity or charity. It was an opportunity, one he couldn't afford to pass up. Before he could answer, the crowd began buzzing again. People were pulling out their phones, recording videos, snapping pictures. Someone shouted, "We need to share this." Within minutes, clips of the boys' performance were being uploaded online, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Comments poured in from strangers. "Wow, this kid is amazing. Talent like this deserves recognition. What a star." By the time the party ended, the boys' world had changed forever. What started as a simple act of curiosity, just wanting to touch a piano, had turned into something far greater. He had silenced his critics, won over skeptics, and captured the hearts of everyone who heard him play. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would take him places he never imagined possible. The next day, the boy woke up to a completely different world. His phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, messages from friends, family, and even people he didn't know. Social media had exploded with videos of his performance at the mansion. Comments poured in from all over the globe. "This kid is a genius. Where has he been hiding? What an incredible talent." Some viewers shared stories of how his music moved them to tears, while others begged for updates on what would come next. At first, the boy didn't know how to process it all. He sat on the edge of his bed, scrolling through the comments, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. Was this really happening? Just yesterday, he was an ordinary kid walking home from school, dreaming of playing a real piano someday. And now here he was, a viral sensation being celebrated by thousands of strangers. His mom came into the room, holding her phone in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. She looked as stunned as he felt. "Did you see this?" she asked, showing him yet another video of his performance that someone had posted online. "People are saying such wonderful things about you." The boy nodded but stayed quiet. Part of him was thrilled, but another part worried about what came next. Would people forget about him once the excitement died down? Or worse, would they expect him to keep performing without giving him time to grow? Later that morning, Mrs. Harper arrived at their house. True to her word, she hadn't wasted any time reaching out. She brought along a folder filled with papers, brochures, and handwritten notes. Sitting down at their small kitchen table, she explained her plan. "I've already spoken to a few colleagues," she began, her voice steady and reassuring. "There's a community center nearby that offers private lessons. I can arrange for you to attend twice a week. Plus, there's a scholarship program I think you'd qualify for. It'll cover most of the costs." The boy listened intently, his heart racing. This was more than he could have ever hoped for. But before agreeing, he glanced at his mom, silently asking if this was okay. She gave him a small nod, her eyes glistening with emotion. They both knew this was a chance they couldn't pass up. "Thank you," the boy finally said, looking at Mrs. Harper. I don't know what to say." She smiled warmly. "You don't need to say anything right now. Just promise me you'll work hard. Talent like yours doesn't come around often, but it needs nurturing. With the right guidance, you could go far." From that day forward, the boy's life changed dramatically. Twice a week, he attended lessons at the community center, practicing on a beautiful upright piano donated by a local sponsor. Mrs. Harper became his mentor, guiding him not just in technique but also in understanding music as a language. She taught him how to read sheet music, compose his own pieces, and express emotions through every note he played. But it wasn't always easy. There were days when frustration got the better of him. Sometimes his fingers stumbled over complicated passages, or he struggled to translate the melodies in his head onto the keys. On those days, Mrs. Harper reminded him why he started. "Music isn't about perfection," she'd say. "It's about connection. Don't lose sight of that." Meanwhile, the rich boy who had challenged him reached out unexpectedly. One afternoon, while leaving the community center, the boy saw him standing outside, fidgeting nervously. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Hey," the rich boy finally said, breaking the silence. "Can we talk?" They walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench under the shade of a tree. The rich boy hesitated before speaking, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I wanted to apologize," he admitted. "What I said back at my house. It was wrong. I judged you based on stupid assumptions, and I'm sorry." The boy raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I realized something after hearing you play," the rich boy replied. "You showed everyone that talent doesn't care where you come from. It made me rethink a lot of things, not just about you, but about myself too." For a long moment the boy studied him, searching for signs of insincerity, but all he saw was honesty. Slowly, he nodded. Apology accepted. Their conversation marked the beginning of an unlikely friendship. Over time, the two boys grew closer, bonding over their shared love of music. The rich boy even started taking piano lessons himself, inspired by the passion and dedication he saw in his new friend. Though they came from different worlds, music bridged the gap between them, proving that common ground could be found in the most unexpected places. As weeks turned into months, the boy's confidence soared. He began performing at small events organized by Mrs. Harper and the community center. At first, these were low-key gatherings, local fundraisers, church recitals, school assemblies. But each performance sharpened his skills and boosted his courage. People marveled at how much he had grown, not just as a musician, but as a person. One evening, after a particularly moving recital, a man approached him with tears in his eyes. "Your music touched my soul tonight," he said. "It reminded me of my childhood, of moments I thought I'd forgotten. Thank you for sharing your gift with us." The boy smiled, humbled by the compliment. It was moments like these that reminded him why he loved music so much. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about connecting with others, creating something that resonated deep within their hearts. By the end of the year, the boy had become a well-known figure in the community. Local newspapers wrote articles about him, calling him a prodigy and a rising star. Teachers encouraged their students to follow his example, showing that hard work and determination could lead to extraordinary achievements. Even the mayor invited him to perform at a citywide event, honoring him for inspiring young people across Atlanta. Yet despite all the attention, the boy remained grounded. He never forgot where he came from or the struggles his family faced. Every success fueled his desire to give back, to help others discover the joy of music just as he had. Little did he know, this dream would soon take shape in ways he never imagined. As the months rolled by, the boy's journey took on a life of its own. He wasn't just a local sensation anymore. His story had spread far beyond Atlanta. People from neighboring cities and even other states began reaching out, asking if he could perform at their events. Churches, community centers, schools, and charity galas all wanted him to play. At first, his mom was hesitant about accepting so many invitations. She worried it might overwhelm him or take away from his studies. But the boy reassured her, saying, "Mom, this is what I've always dreamed of doing. I can handle it." And handle it he did. Each performance became an opportunity for him to grow, not just as a musician, but as a person. Whether it was playing for a group of elderly folks at a nursing home or entertaining a packed auditorium during a fundraising gala, he poured his heart into every note. The more he played, the more people responded. They didn't just clap, they cheered, cried, and sometimes even sang along. It was clear that his music had a way of touching something deep inside them. One evening, after performing at a benefit concert for underprivileged kids, the boy met a woman who would change his perspective forever. She introduced herself as Ms. Bennett, a director of a nonprofit organization focused on providing arts education to children in low-income areas. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she shook his hand. "That was incredible," she said. "You have no idea how much your music means to these kids. Some of them have never even seen a piano before tonight." The boy felt a lump rise in his throat. Hearing those words reminded him of his own childhood, the nights spent practicing on a borrowed keyboard, dreaming of someday playing on a real piano. He realized how lucky he'd been to find Mrs. Harper and the scholarship program that helped him pursue his passion. Not everyone had that chance. "I wish there was a way to help more kids like me," he admitted softly. Kids who love music but don't have access to instruments or lessons. Ms. Bennett smiled knowingly. Funny you should say that, she replied. I've actually been working on a project, a mobile music lab that travels to underserved communities. We set up workshops, bring instruments, and teach kids the basics of music. But we need someone to inspire them, someone they can look up to, someone like you. The boy blinked, stunned by the suggestion. Him? Inspiring others? It sounded impossible, yet also incredibly exciting. For years, he'd dreamed of making music his career, but now he saw a bigger purpose. Music wasn't just about personal success. It was about giving back, about creating opportunities for others. Let me think about it, he told Ms. Bennett, though deep down, he already knew his answer would be yes. Over the next few weeks, the boy threw himself into planning. With Ms. Bennett's guidance, he started visiting neighborhoods similar to the one where he grew up. These places often lacked resources, with schools cutting art programs and families struggling to make ends meet. Yet everywhere he went, he found kids eager to learn. Their faces lit up when they saw the portable keyboards and guitars brought by the mobile lab. Many of them shyly approached him, asking questions about how he learned to play. During one workshop, a little girl tugged at his sleeve. She couldn't have been older than 6, her hair tied back in pigtails. Can I really learn to play? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He knelt down to her level, smiling warmly. Of course you can. Everyone starts somewhere. All you need is patience and practice. Her eyes widened with wonder. Will I be as good as you someday? He chuckled. Maybe even better. Watching her face light up filled him with a sense of purpose he'd never felt before. This was why he loved music, not because it made him famous, but because it brought people together. It gave them hope, joy, and a way to express themselves when words weren't enough. Back home, the boy worked tirelessly to balance his growing responsibilities. Between performances, workshops, and schoolwork, his days were packed. Still, he made time to visit Mrs. Harper, who continued to mentor him. Under her guidance, he composed his first original piece, a tribute to his mom and everything she had sacrificed for him. When he played it for her, tears streamed down her face. You're ready, she said simply. Ready to take this gift of yours and share it with the world. Her words stuck with him. Ready? Was he truly prepared for what lay ahead? Doubts crept in occasionally, especially late at night when the house was quiet, and he sat alone at the piano. Could he live up to the expectations people had of him? Would he ever feel like he belonged in the spotlight? But then he remembered the faces of the children he'd met, their laughter, their curiosity, their hunger to learn. That's what kept him going. Every time he felt unsure, he thought about them and how much music meant to them. If he could inspire even one child to chase their dreams, wouldn't it all be worth it? By the end of the year, the Mobile Music Lab had reached dozens of communities, introducing hundreds of kids to the magic of music. The boy's efforts didn't go unnoticed. Local news stations covered the initiative, highlighting his dedication to giving back. One reporter described him as a beacon of hope for a new generation of musicians. Another called him proof that talent, combined with compassion, can transform lives. Even the rich boy who had once mocked him joined in, volunteering, his time to help organize events and raise funds for the program. Together, they proved that friendships could blossom in the most unexpected ways. Their bond grew stronger with each passing month, built on mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. Through it all, the boy remained humble. He knew he still had a lot to learn, both as a musician and as a human being. But he also knew, one thing for certain, music had given him a voice when he thought he didn't have one. And now, he was determined to use that voice to lift others up, to show them that no matter where they came from or what challenges they faced, their dreams were valid and worth pursuing. Little did he know, his journey was only beginning. The road ahead would be long and unpredictable, filled with highs and lows, triumphs and setbacks. But armed with his talent, his determination, and the unwavering support of those around him, he was ready to face whatever came next. As the years passed, the boy grew into a young man. His hands, once small and unsure on the piano keys, now moved with confidence and grace. The world had opened its doors to him in ways he could never have imagined. From performing at prestigious concert halls to being invited to speak at educational conferences, his journey became a beacon of inspiration for countless others. Yet through it all, he stayed true to who he was, a humble soul who believed in the power of music to change lives. One summer evening, after finishing a performance at a major arts festival, he found himself standing backstage, overwhelmed by the applause still echoing from the auditorium. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was thunderous, heartfelt, and full of admiration. People were on their feet cheering as if they didn't want the moment to end. For a second, he closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He thought, back to that day at the mansion, the day when everything changed. Back then he'd been an outsider, mocked for daring to touch something not meant for him. Now here he was, celebrated not only for his talent, but also for his resilience and generosity. Life had taken him on a roller coaster ride, and every twist and turn had shaped him into the person he was today. Out in the lobby, fans lined up to meet him. Some brought gifts, handwritten letters, drawings of pianos, or photos they wanted, signed. Others simply wanted to shake his hand or say thank you. One woman, tears streaming down her face, hugged him tightly. "Your music saved me," she whispered. "When I lost my job and felt like giving up, your songs reminded me to keep going." Her words hit him like a punch to the chest. He hadn't realized how deeply his music resonated with people until that moment. Sure, he knew it made them smile or cry, but hearing her story made him understand just how much weight his melodies carried. Music wasn't just entertainment. It was therapy, comfort, and hope wrapped into one. Later that night, as he sat alone in his hotel room, he reflected on how far he'd come. His mom called him, her voice filled with pride. "I saw your performance online," she said. "You were amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," he replied, smiling despite the lump in his throat. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." She laughed softly. "Oh, stop it. You're the one who worked hard. Remember those nights when you practiced until your fingers hurt? That's what got you here." Her words reminded him of something important. Success wasn't handed to him, it was earned. Every late-night practice session, every missed party, every sacrifice he and his mom had made along the way played a part in bringing him to this point. And yet none of it would have mattered if he hadn't stayed true to himself. The Mobile Music Lab continued to thrive under his leadership. What started as a small initiative had grown into a nationwide movement. Schools, community centers, and even corporations pitched in to support the cause. Instruments were donated, teachers volunteered their time, and local governments provided funding to expand the program. Thousands of kids across the country now had access to music education, something many of them wouldn't have dreamed possible just a few years ago. During one visit to a rural town, he met a teenager named Alex. The kid reminded him so much of himself. Quiet, determined, and bursting with potential. Alex had taught himself to play guitar using YouTube videos, but he lacked formal training and proper equipment. When the boy, now a young man, heard Alex strumming a tune during a workshop, he immediately pulled him aside. "You've got something special," he told Alex. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Keep practicing, and don't be afraid to dream big." Alex nodded, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "Hearing you say that means a lot." Moments like these reminded him why he kept pushing forward. Helping others discover their own talents gave him a sense of fulfillment that no award or accolade ever could. He often joked with Mrs. Harper that he felt like a musical matchmaker, connecting kids with opportunities they never knew existed. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were challenges along the way. Funding shortages, logistical hurdles, and skeptics who doubted whether the program could make a real difference. Some critics argued that investing in arts education was a waste of resources, especially in struggling communities. To them, he had a simple response: Art isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It teaches kids creativity, discipline, and self-expression. Those are skills they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives. His arguments usually silenced the naysayers, though not everyone came around right away. Still, he refused to let negativity slow him down. Instead, he focused on the positive impact he saw every day. The smiles on children's faces, the progress they made, and the dreams they dared to chase. Meanwhile, the rich boy who had once challenged him remained a steadfast ally. Over time, their friendship deepened, evolving into a partnership. Together, they launched a scholarship fund to help talented kids pursue higher education in music. The rich boy used his family's connections to secure donations, while the young man shared his story to inspire donors. Their collaboration proved unstoppable, raising millions of dollars within the first year alone. At the scholarship's inaugural ceremony, the rich boy stood beside him on stage, addressing the audience. "I used to think success was about wealth and privilege," and he admitted. "But meeting my friend changed everything. He showed me that true greatness comes from using your gifts to uplift others. That's why we're here today, to give kids the tools they need to succeed, regardless of where they come from." The crowd erupted in applause, touched by his honesty. Afterward, several parents approached them, thanking them for believing in their children. One father, tears streaming down his face, shook both their hands. "This means the world to us," he said. "My daughter has always loved singing, but I never thought she'd have a chance to study it seriously. Now, because of you, she does." Seeing the joy on people's faces reinforced their belief in the importance of what they were doing. They weren't just handing out scholarships. They were planting seeds of possibility, nurturing dreams that might otherwise have withered away. By the time he turned 25, the young man had achieved more than most people did in a lifetime. He performed sold-out concerts, released critically acclaimed albums, and received numerous awards for his contributions to music and education. Yet none of these accomplishments compared to the pride he felt knowing he'd helped create a brighter future for others. In interviews, he often spoke about the lessons he'd learned along the way. "Success isn't about fame or money," he'd say. "It's about making a difference. If I can inspire even one person to follow their dreams, then everything I've done is worth it." His message resonated with audiences worldwide. People admired not just his talent but also his humility and commitment to giving back. Teachers used his story to motivate their students. Nonprofits looked to him as a role model, and aspiring musicians sought his advice. Through it all, he never forgot where he came from. Whenever life got overwhelming, he returned to the neighborhood where he grew up, visiting old friends and playing impromptu concerts for the kids. Watching their faces light up as he played reminded him of why he fell in love with music in the first place. Little did he know, his greatest challenge and triumph was yet to come. Years flew by, and the young man's influence only grew stronger. His music reached corners of the world he'd never imagined, remote villages in Africa, bustling cities in Asia, quiet towns in Europe. Everywhere he went, people greeted him with open arms, eager to hear his story and experience the magic of his melodies. But as much as he loved performing on grand stages and meeting new faces, there was one dream that still lingered in the back of his mind: to build a permanent space where kids from all walks of life could come together to learn, create, and grow through music. He called it the Harmony Center. It wasn't just going to be another school or community program. It was going to be a sanctuary, a place where children who couldn't afford lessons could still pick up an instrument and discover their potential, where teenagers struggling to find their place in the world could channel their emotions into songwriting, where families could gather for weekend concerts, sharing laughter and tears over shared experiences. He envisioned it as more than a building. It would be a home for anyone who needed it. Bringing this vision to life wasn't easy. Building such a center required money, resources, and support on a scale he'd never tackled before. So, he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He partnered with Mrs. Harper, the rich boy turned close friend, and countless others who believed in his mission. Together, they organized fundraisers, pitched ideas to investors, and rallied communities to contribute whatever they could. whether it was time, talent, or treasure. One evening, after months of tireless effort, he stood outside, a construction site, staring at the skeletal frame of what would soon become the Harmony Center. The air smelled of fresh concrete and sawdust, and workers buzzed around, hammering nails and laying bricks. It was far from finished, but already he could picture it in his mind. The bright windows welcoming visitors, the soundproof practice, rooms humming with creativity, the main hall filled with chairs for performances. As he stood there lost in thought, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Hey, daydreamer." He turned to see the rich boy walking toward him holding 2 cups of coffee. "Figured you might need a break." "Thanks," he said, taking the cup gratefully. They leaned against the fence surrounding the site, sipping their drinks in comfortable silence. Finally, the rich boy spoke. "You know, when we first met, I didn't think you'd amount to much. No offense." The young man chuckled. "None taken. You weren't exactly wrong. I didn't have much back then. But look at you now," the rich boy continued, gesturing toward the construction site. "You're building something incredible here. Something that's going to change lives for generations." "It's not just me," the young man replied. "None of this would have been possible without people like you, Mrs. Harper, my mom. Everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." The rich boy nodded, smiling. "Still, it takes guts to turn a dream into reality. Most people wouldn't even try." They stayed there for a while longer, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting golden light over the unfinished structure. In that moment, the young man felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for how far he'd come, but for the people who had walked beside him every step of the way. When the Harmony Center finally opened its doors, it was nothing short of extraordinary. Hundreds of people attended the grand opening, spilling out onto the streets as local bands played lively tunes and food trucks lined the block. Inside, walls were adorned with colorful murals painted by neighborhood artists, and every room buzzed with activity. Kids crowded around instruments, giggling as they plucked strings or tapped keys. Parents snapped photos, their faces glowing with pride. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the young man took the stage, looking out at the sea of faces. For a moment he felt overwhelmed. This was more than just a building. It was proof that dreams, no matter how big, could come true if you worked hard enough and surrounded yourself with the right people. "I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today," he began, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "This isn't just my dream. It's ours. Together we've created a space where creativity knows no limits, where barriers fall away, and where everyone has a chance to shine." The crowd erupted in applause, cheering loudly. As he stepped down from the stage, a little girl approached him shyly, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Can you sign this?" He knelt down to her level, taking the paper. "Of course," he said, signing his name with a flourish. Then, handing it back, he added, "What's your name?" "Lila," she replied, her cheeks turning pink. "Well, Lila," he said, smiling warmly, "I hope you'll come back often. Maybe one day you'll perform on that stage." Her eyes widened with excitement. "Really? Do you think I could?" "I know you can," he said firmly. "All you need is passion and practice, and maybe a little bit of courage." She grinned, skipping off to join her friends. Watching her go, he felt a surge of hope. If even one child walked away inspired, then everything they'd built would be worth it. Over time, the Harmony Center became a cornerstone of the community. Kids poured in daily, eager to learn and explore. Some discovered hidden talents. Others found solace in the rhythm of a drum beat or the strum of a guitar string. Families gathered for monthly recitals, celebrating milestones big and small. Teachers volunteered their time, knowing they were shaping the next generation of musicians, artists, and leaders. For the young man, seeing the center thrive brought a sense of fulfillment he couldn't put into words. Every note played within its walls reminded him of his own journey, the struggles, the triumphs, the moments that defined him. And every child who walked through its doors carried the promise of a brighter future. In interviews, He often reflected on how much had changed since that fateful day at the mansion. People used to judge me based on where I came from, he said. But I learned that talent doesn't care about your background. Neither does kindness, determination, or hope. What matters is what you do with the opportunities you're given, and whether you use them to lift others up. His message resonated deeply, inspiring countless individuals to pursue their passions and give back to their communities. From aspiring musicians to seasoned professionals, people looked to him as a symbol of resilience and generosity. Years later, as he sat in the quiet of his office late one night, he flipped through old photos of his early days. There he was, scrawny kid with wide eyes and calloused fingers sitting at a borrowed keyboard. Next to it was a picture of him standing beside the gleaming grand piano at the mansion, surrounded by awestruck guests. And finally, there was a recent photo of him cutting the ribbon at the Harmony Center, surrounded by smiling children and proud supporters. He smiled to himself, closing the album. Life had taken him places he never dreamed possible, but none of it would have mattered if he hadn't stayed true to his roots. Music had given him a voice, a purpose, and a way to connect with the world. Now, through the Harmony Center, he hoped to pass that gift along to others, for years, decades, lifetimes to come. And as he switched off the light and headed home, he knew one thing for certain: the melody of his life was still playing, and it was far from over.